This peaceful state of war, originally published in Writers of the Future, Volume 27, written and narrated by Patty Jansen. Chapter 1. Ash, Brother Copernicus says. I rub the substance between the thumb and fingers of my gloves. It's fine and powdery and white, unbelievably white. A thick layer of it covers the field of tree stumps and broken branches, all the way to the wall of rainforest in the distance. Heat shimmers above the brilliant surface. Yesterday, when arriving from Solaris Station, I saw these tracks from space. They looked like scars, as if a deranged soul had taken a knife to the planet, cutting scores in the cover of forest. The Herne burnt these tracks wherever they destroyed the Pari villagers. There is raw hatred in Brother Copernicus's voice, even when filtered through his rebreather mask. They stacked up the debris from the houses and the bodies and burnt the lot, always at night, so we wouldn't notice. I let the powder trickle from my glove, fighting the impulse to rub my hand on my protective robe. I can't. The action of rubbing might trigger a spark that will lead to all sorts of trouble in this high-oxygen atmosphere. Those warnings played in the cabin of the landing craft have etched themselves in my mind. Why is it so white? Has anyone analyzed this? The color intrigues me, and I wonder why the ground underneath the patch where I've picked up the powder is moist and cool. I'm sure someone has. Is that important? It's ash, envoy. Human ash. Brother Copernicus brandishes the word human like a sword, challenging anyone who dares to disagree. You're standing on the biggest murder site in all of humanity. Chapter 2. The camp looks like a prison with two perimeter fences, one about 5 meters inside the other, the top bar of each armed with spikes as long as my hand. Through 2 lots of metal security mesh, I can make out tents of the infantry variety, lined up in perfect rows. There is no sign of movement, human or alien. I follow Brother Copernicus along the walkway of rubbery mats. My crutches keep sinking into the little crevices in the mats that allow rain to filter through. Sweat rolls between my breasts and over my back. At the moment, I hate every gram of my uncooperative body, and my body has a lot of grams. Let's leave it at that. You've spent too much time in space, Miranda, the doctor at Solaris would say in his self-righteous voice. I agree. I love low-G environments. I thrive in crisp, recycled air. I hate planets. I'm a whale on a beach. 3 guards stand at the camp entrance, missionaries in ankle-length brown habits, with sleeves tucked into their gloves. The religious garb contrasts oddly with the plasma guns on their belts and crossbows in their arms. I stare at the weapon in the closest guard's hands as he busies himself opening the gate. Why the heck would they use crossbows? Brother Copernicus has already gone through the open gate. Envoy Tonkin, if you please. I'm still waiting for the first signs that he's getting annoyed with my slow walking pace. There are none. He's the model religious brother, patient, friendly, selflessly taking up the cause of the downtrodden, convinced that I represent the enemy. We walk through into a metal cage and wait for the guards to shut the gate behind us. Pretty crazy security, I say, hating the way the mask reflects my voice back at me. It works, though. The fighting stopped the moment we locked up the local band of Herne. There have been no more attacks on Pari villages, at least not in this area. He lets the obvious go unspoken. The slaughter continues unabated in all the places where the Universal Church doesn't have a mission, which is pretty much all of the planet. He and his mission want to stop the war. The Solaris agency wants me to assess if that's even feasible. I feel in my bones, the way my contract was phrased, that they want humans off Bianca, that it's too risky, too expensive. To him, I am the enemy. We walk into the murderer's camp. The second gate shuts behind us with a definitive clang. This way, Brother Copernicus says. The Hern are all in the mess tent. When my eyes adjust to the drop in light, I cannot help but feel awed. Oh my, the sight of these alien people, their sheer size, their athletic build, their hair-covered backs, their green skin and black animal-like eyes. Missionaries patrol the perimeter of the tent, crossbows slung across their shoulders. Of course, a plasma weapon will cause considerable risk in this high-oxygen atmosphere. Use it, and you might blow up the whole camp. Much safer for all to resort to something less destructive first. Brothers in protective gear are wheeling dinner trolleys between the tables. There is no food on the trays, only jugs of what looks like cordial. None of the aliens take any interest in the trolleys. None of them communicate. They sit on their benches with their backs incredibly straight and watch me, every single one. There must be at least 300 of them, and their presence is overwhelming. And then their smell. No one warned me about the smell. It's strong, it's musky, it permeates the filter of my mask. I feel like I'm choking. I hold the hose to the filter canister on my belt, struggling not to rip the whole contraption from my face. I can't, I know. The lethal soup of molecules that passes for air would kill me within minutes. The inside of the visor fogs up. In the narrow aisle, I accidentally bang my left crotch into the back of a bench. Excuse me. I'm taking deep gasps of air. From the corner of my awareness, I notice someone getting up. Before I know what's happening, I'm on the ground and several hot-skinned bodies crash into me. People are shouting and screaming. 2 twanging shots go off. A missionary drags me under the cover of a table. As quickly as it started, it's over. I sit up, dazed. One of the Hern is held down by 3 missionaries sitting on top of him. Another is pulling at a crossbow bolt in his thigh. The rivulets of blood that run from the wound are nearly black. The creature's eyes are fierce with anger. I feel sick and filled with a renewed respect for crossbows. A missionary rushes to me, but instead of helping me to my feet, he picks up my crutches. "You'll have to keep these outside," he says, and he runs away, carrying my only means of independent motion. I'm too flabbergasted to reply. I know the church doesn't want me here, but does that have to mean they humiliate me in front of the natives? Brother Copernicus helps me up, alone, which must take some strength. When he supports me through the aisle, I feel the muscles straining through his layers of protective clothing. He's trembling. The reflective visor hides his face. "I'll explain later," he says in a low voice. I want to shout, "Now's as good a time as any," but I'm not going to make a scene here. The Hern inmates are all watching us. I make my way to the table holding onto his arm, even though my left knee spikes with pain every time I put weight on it. A group of men hustles the attackers out the door, and everyone continues as if nothing has happened. Some missionaries are already seated at the table in the middle of the tent. Most have taken off their gloves and hoods, which are UV protection, but the men still look the same to me, with their shaved heads and shaved eyebrows, wearing the same brown habits. When they use face masks, I can't even begin to guess who they are. They nod greetings as I sit down. They sure remember who I am. The Hern envoy who approaches the table is huge. The frame of the bench creaks when he takes his place opposite us. His black eyes rest on me, making my skin crawl. They are round and lidless, surrounded by a ring of long lashes. These creatures are human? I bow. Envoy? He doesn't show any emotion. I touch my chest. I'm Miranda Tonkin. What is your name? I hold my hand out flat. No pointing. They might take that as a sign of aggression. His face remains blank. I'm sorry, I hiss a whisper to Brother Copernicus. What's his name? Although I'm only guessing the creature is male. They've never used names with us. No names? Some tribes consider names personal property that loses power when spread too widely. But usually they have nicknames. Clearly, the Hern distrust the missionaries too deeply to give out any personal information. I'm wondering why they even allow themselves to be incarcerated in this camp. Surely they could escape if they banded together and made use of their formidable strength. One of the missionaries rolls out a map of a terrain that has no natural vantage points except a grid of latitudes and longitudes and the paths of burnt forest penciled in. He points at various sections, also penciled in. Another missionary explains for my benefit how the church is negotiating sections for the Parry and Hern to live separate from each other. The Hern envoy looks on, saying nothing, while the missionaries carve up his homeland. His eyes move, but the rest of his body is perfectly still, reminding me of a predator. Who is the prey? In the middle of a conversation between two brothers, he points at me. Moni, he says. His voice is rough. It's the first time I hear any of them speak. A couple of other Hern grumble at this word. Black eyes meet mine, conveying that somehow this means I'm fair game. I glance at Brother Copernicus, but he shrugs. One of the words we haven't been able to translate. He sounds nervous. I wonder how many words they have been able to translate. How many words they've even heard. Not too many, I'm thinking. Chapter 3. I'm sorry you had to experience that, Brother Copernicus says when we're outside the camp. Sorry? I have my crutches back, given to me by the guard at the gate. Yes, I should have looked closer at those crutches. If I'd realized they were made of titanium, I'd have given you some replacements. For some reason, exposure to titanium makes the Hern go crazy. Why couldn't you explain that in the tent? The Hern can't understand us anyway. He shrugs, and it strikes me he's been getting increasingly uncomfortable. Because he doesn't like being assigned as my guide? Because his superiors have told him to do things he doesn't agree with? Like deliberately letting me take my crutches into the camp? What is so special about titanium? My heart is thudding. I could have been killed in that camp. The brothers would have reported it as an accident, and no one at Solaris would ever have known the truth. We need more time to research these people. Their attraction to titanium is not on our list of priorities, as you may understand. The Hern are a particularly impenetrable folk, but if the segregation plan works, we'll save a lot of lives. Segregation is an ugly and temporary solution, and only works if both parties agree to it and understand the concept. Do you think these Hern understand? Are you sure you'd call them human? We'd police the boundaries. Do you think they understand? He faces me, but all I see is my own reflection in that white landscape, like a walrus on a sunny beach. Solaris thinks the church are idiots, that we've botched this project, don't they? You're going to recommend withdrawing the agency's subsidy, aren't you? I don't reply. Wait until you see the Parry and tell me these people don't deserve saving. I'm an envoy, an observer. I don't make the final decision. The board does that. Neglecting to mention that I sit on the board as rotating member. I'll decide what I'll recommend when the time comes. I don't dare say any more for my own safety. Chapter 4. The Perry camp is very different from the Hearns, a collection of army green tents amongst obscenely green rainforest. It's only early morning, but the heat is relentless. The suit is meant to protect me, but I can feel the ultraviolet radiation through layers of sleeves. The camp is ordered, with tents in neat rows. There are fields of crops and people working in them. A few missionaries stroll past. They carry plasma guns on their belts, but no crossbows. A group of Perry have brought in a felled tree and are sawing it into slices with a huge double-handed blade saw. They are smaller than us, muscular and brown, virtually hairless. Moisture gleams on bent backs. We stop to watch the activity. It strikes me how they work with each other, how they chatter, and how the Hearn didn't do any of those things. What are they making? I ask. They'll make anything. They seem to have this compulsion to build things, to accumulate structures. We found huge above-ground settlements, all made from wood, palaces of incredible craftsmanship. The tree trunk is huge, at least 10 meters wide. At cross-section, the wood is dark and glitters like crystal. It isn't wood in the usual sense of the word, and contains far more minerals and metals than wood on Earth, and far less carbon. Bianca has some very tough and strange proteins that hold vegetation together on a cellular level. I'm guessing the wood is hard, because the saw makes little progress. The metal would be titanium, since it's the dominant metal on the planet, but no one has observed any means by which these people produce tools like this. There is so much to see: strange clothing, mostly blue, necklaces and thick armbands, titanium also, tattoos on arms and legs, children, many of them, mostly naked, with oddly wrinkled skin. To be honest, I am unsure if they are children. A bit further into the camp, a group is taking down an army tent, folding it up meticulously. A few taller Perry are digging a hole, bringing up clods of sticky, white soil. Others use the clay to sand down poles, rubbing it over the wood in a numb routine. They'll have some sort of structure up by the end of the day, Brother Copernicus says. That house over there only went up yesterday. The structure he points out is already 2 floors high, with walls made out of intricate latticework. 2 days old? It's hard to believe. While we walk past, more and more of these people put down their tools. Some of them run to Brother Copernicus and stroke the fabric of his robe. He pulls 1 or 2 into a hug. Another missionary joins us, handing out pieces of fruit from a bowl. The yellow morsels pass from hand to hand under much chatter and sounds that resemble laughter. It's hard not to like these people: cute, industrious, self-sufficient, grateful. They've built an enormous structure as their central gathering place. It's 3 floors high, has slanted roofs covered with carved planks, diamond-shaped windows, and walls made of latticework that forms patterns of stars. Wow, is my first reaction. Impressive, isn't it? Brother Copernicus sounds much more self-assured than he did in the Hearn camp. And then to think of those bastards out there burning all this to the ground. Just think of the cultural heritage. There'd be enough material here for an entire university of scientists. These people are willing and able to communicate with us. We enter the ground floor of the structure, which is only a hall from where a number of ladders lead up. I'm about to protest that there's no way I can get up when a cage sails down from above, suspended from thick ropes. They've made a lift. The Perry that steps out of the cage is taller than most, with soft brown eyes that make me think the creature is female, even though nothing else about the brown-skinned body does. But she sounds better than it. Like several of the adults, she has a fuzz of hair on her head and back. The skin on her chest shows darker patches of pigment. We think the size and skin coloring is a sign they've reached sexual maturity, Brother Copernicus says. She gets in the cage with us. The muscles in her back ripple when she pulls the rope that, via a system of pulleys, hauls us to the top floor of the building. Thank you, I say. I reach into my pocket, where my gloved hand encounters my no longer current travel band. I pull it out, a little piece of white plastic with an embedded microchip, and give it to her. It looks strange in the palm of her hand, technology alien to this world. It goes like this. I undo the clip and fit it around her wrist. Snap the clip shut. She looks at it, bows, and runs off. A group of missionaries meets us on the top floor of the building. While we're being introduced, I spy the Parry girl in the corner showing off her prize. I'm smiling. It's hard not to. We enter a large room with a vaulted ceiling. Centerpiece of the room is a heavy wooden table with surrounding benches all carved, it seems, from the same piece of wood. Beyond that, through the silhouetted lattice work and the diamond-shaped window, the view stretches over the treetops. I walk to the window to have a better look. I can see all the way to the mission on the other side of the white track, to the Herne camp, a dark blot in the desolate white landscape, over undulating country with a thick cover of blue-green foliage. A heat haze hangs over the forest, a soup of gases that turns the air faintly brown, like heavy pollution over a city. It's ozone, formed under the influence of sunlight, and it breaks down again at night when the rains come. Miranda, Brother Copernicus calls from behind. Everyone is already at the table. Our envoy is a small Parry with stooped shoulders and large brown eyes. I decide the creature is female. I ask her name, but as in the Herne camp, I'm informed they do not use names. I could believe that of the Herne, but these creatures have a lot more trust in us. Why no names? The envoy sits at the table and folds long-fingered hands together. Peace, she says. We will have peace, Brother Copernicus says, when this terrible war is over. Peace, she repeats. We go feed the fields. We'll try, he says. I'm not sure what he's talking about. I'm unsure she understands. Is this the extent to which the missionaries have been able to teach them our language? Brother Copernicus said they were able to communicate. Chapter 5. The dining hall of the mission is a large, echoing place, austere as the universal church itself. I've been sitting here since returning from the camps, reading the report written by the previous Solaris envoy 4 months ago. It's very quiet in this contemplative room, and I'm fighting my gritty eyes, desperate for sleep. The Parry from the nearby village were coming to the mission almost every day. The native woman, Tani, has made great linguistic progress. She has also shown an interest in the plants cultivated near the mission. Wait, hang on. I reread the passage. So the Parry did, at one stage, use names. They did, at one stage, communicate better than they do now. I look up at the vaulted ceiling. One could imagine, if one were as time-lag-addled as I am, that not Bianca's son, but an angel looks in through the windows up there, bathing the room in a golden glow. One could believe that this was a sign that this world was Eden, as the church used to call it, until the hell of war broke loose. Above the dais at the far end of the room, there is a small altar with candles, which flicker in the filtered air. Slogans on the wall proclaim space is God and space is not empty. It appears the church was right about the not empty bit. Bianca is the first world where humans discovered higher intelligent life. Ever since, the question has divided the Solaris board. The Parry and Hearn look human enough, but are they really? And even if they are, does that give us the right to interfere? The brothers of the church shuffle into the hall in twos and threes. It surprises me how many of them are old, much older than me. It must be close to dinner time. Brother Copernicus sits opposite me. His frown carries an implicit question. I thought your room was comfortable enough. Better light here, I say, glancing at the bright beams intersecting the roof space. I'm avoiding his eyes. I can hardly tell him I don't trust the brothers after the incident at the Hearn camp, and prefer to spend as much time as possible in a public space where any attacks on me are likely to have witnesses. What are you reading? Envoy El-Amani's report. Oh, there is no emotion in that single word. Yet he must have read the report and know what's in it. I leave a few pages. She says the Parry used to have names. Her report suggests a much deeper level of communication with them than I saw today. He shrugs, sighs, shrugs again, uneasy. What is under that not unattractive, straight-nosed face? When he doesn't say anything, I read the passage aloud. Brother Copernicus is staring at his hands, interlaced over the table. His fingers are deeply bronzed, oxygen-wrinkled, and belie his age. The Parry are traumatized by what's happened to them, he says, finally. When we came here, there were thousands of them. They lived in a most beautiful and intricate village structure. You've seen what they can build. It was 100, no, 1,000 times bigger than that. He stops speaking, twitches his mouth, wriggles his shoulders. Moisture glistens in his eyes. No one understands, he says, his voice little more than a whisper. Why would the Hearn attack a peaceful village and butcher everyone in it? The Parry didn't even put up resistance. They stopped speaking to us. They stopped coming for lessons. It's like this war has turned them stupid. The Hearn ran in and the Parry fell to their knees as if they were worshipping them like gods. Maybe they are worshipping the Hearn like gods. He gives me a look that spells blasphemy in huge capital letters. Oh, right, I'm in a church, one that believes that the existence of God will be proven when they find an alien race that also believes in God. Therefore, it is in their interest to study these humanoid aliens and convert them before anyone else gets the chance. I glance at him, very much wanting to say, You look to me to be a more intelligent man than that. He meets my eyes squarely, and a look passes between us I don't know how to take, but that unsettles me deeply. I think he is more intelligent than that. And damn, I feel sorry for him. He's too young, too emotionally involved to be stuck in this hellhole. The food trolley chooses that moment to arrive. That, I decide, is definitely divine intervention. I get up and take a plate, which the serving brother dutifully fills with slop-covered cubed vegetables. When I rejoin the table, a number of others have taken up the seats around us. Envoy El-Amani's journal shoved to the middle of the table, out of the way of their plates. The men range from middle-aged to young. They introduce themselves as brothers Heraclides, Tycho, and Ibn al-Haytham. Ancient Earth astronomers, huh? I say, by way of getting them to talk. Brother Tycho raises his black-stubbled eyebrows. Have any interest in ancient astronomy? His voice is deep and more sensual than is comfortable for a religious brother. I'm an envoy of the Solaris Agency. I have an interest in anything that involves our species' obsession with expansion and resulting conflicts. The other brothers make a point of looking at their plates, but Brother Tycho laughs, not entirely comfortable. conflicts we are working hard to solve. His eyes meet mine. They're dark brown. I strongly suspect that underneath the uniformity of the equalitarian brown robe, he is one of the upper cadre, scouting me out, as it were. Are you happy with your progress? I ask. We're on track. His gaze doesn't waver. We've isolated the Hern. They're under control. We need funds to expand that operation to other parts of the planet. We need funds and equipment for translation and communication with the Pari. Most of that will be coming from church charity, but we need the support from Solaris for inbound transport. And off-planet transport just happens to be much more costly than all the other expenditure combined. I hate it when people try emotional blackmail on us. And yet, damn, Brother Copernicus is right. The Pari deserve humanitarian help. Have you considered that human presence contributes to the war? Brother Copernicus stares at me. Is he shaking his head? You mean the church's presence? Brother Tycho's voice goes cold. The church or any other human involvement? Hardly likely, Brother Tycho continues. We only have one mission on the planet. This war is happening all over. Yes, I agree, but could it have been something human presence has triggered? For example, the Hern are jealous of the attention and help the Pari are getting. There's an easy solution for that. If the Hern stop killing and pilfering, they'll get the same attention. Maybe killing and pilfering is their evolutionary function. His eyes shoot daggers at me. The church is not a great supporter of evolution either. The Hern in the camp appear to be on hunger strike, I continue, perhaps foolhardy. Same thing, envoy. The hunger strike is their problem. We give them food. They refuse to eat. Brother Copernicus shrinks further into the shadows. The discussion turns to other subjects. We eat, we chat about harmless things, or relatively so. About Earth governments and who's in charge. News gets around slowly. The beam sweep from Solaris is restricted to urgent news, and it passes only every few days. There is so much these men don't know. Chapter 6. When I walk back to my room, Brother Copernicus catches up with me in the corridor. I think, he says, and then he pauses, catching his breath. I turn to him, and my questioning look has the effect of making him shrink. He's sweating and pale-faced. You must help, he says. You must understand. What do you mean? We can't leave the Pari to fend for themselves. We, the mission, can't leave Bianca. The Pari will be slaughtered. You're saying that the Hern don't eat. They do. They eat the Pari. It's so awful no one talks about it. Hold on. Wait. I raise my hand to stop the flow of words. A brother comes into the corridor and walks past us, raising his non-existent eyebrows. Come, Brother Copernicus says. I'll show you something. He precedes me into a darkened room. A flick of a switch brings light into a laboratory, empty and deserted. It's eerily quiet except for the ever-present hiss of air from the recycling vents. There are shelves on the walls with jars of preserved samples, huge insects, flowers as big as a dinner plate. What is this place? We used to do research here, he says. Beads of sweat glisten on his brow. Or rather, I used to. I was a church scientist. He walks to a shelf and pulls off a book. The pages contain dried leaves, a herbarium. Look at it. There is so much to discover. Did you know that the plants here don't work the same way as they do on Earth? They use methane, ammonia, and water vapor for photosynthesis. That's why you get the cyanide concentrations in the forest. There are whole communities of mushroom-like organisms that depend on it, like this thing. He leaves through another page to show a picture of some slimy-looking, multi-branched, semi-transparent mushroom attached to a tree. We don't know how it works. Plants produce twice as much oxygen as they do on Earth. They recycle carbon internally. Light is important. See how all the plants angle their leaves for maximum exposure? Even the animals use light. Is that why the hern's skin is green? He takes another book off the shelf. It contains pictures of various forms of parry. There are sketches of their external body parts and a few scans and x-rays. The internal diagrams have a lot of white space with tentative drawings of blood vessels and organs. There is not much about the hern, I say, leafing through the book. He shakes his head. I come to a page with a picture of a body lying on the ground. The stomach is cut open, flaps of skin folded away to reveal a large white sac inside the stomach cavity. That's hern, he says, the only specimen anyone ever studied, before its fellows attacked and burned the body. It happened before I came. I turn the page and come face to face with another picture of the white sac cut open. The content oozes out onto the ground. It looks like caviar. Eggs? I feel sick and turn the page again. The next page is empty. The scientists never had the opportunity to study the hern. There never used to be many, and it was a long time before anyone saw them up close. They're the top of the food chain, and they've multiplied like crazy since we've come. I know Brother Tycho will never admit it, but it has to be something we have done to allow that to happen. When we came here, there were no white tracks. The Pari lived happily in their villages. They were learning to communicate with us, and then, all of a sudden, he lifts his hands. No one knows what happened, but the only thing that changed was that we were here trying to make these creatures human. Which they are not. Which, indeed, they're not. Why did the research stop? I ask. Solaris withdrew because there's no profit, but you know all about that. When I ignore the barb, he goes on. There is nothing to mine here except titanium, and there's plenty of that in places that don't require heavy lift off-planet transport. So the Solaris scientists left. Then the church scientists took over the labs. In other words, you. Yes, me and others who have all left. He breathes in deeply and continues. The others were never in the order. They were only employed by the church. He lets a further silence lapse and continues in third person. The scientists working for the church found that neither the hern nor the Pari are quite as human as they look. The upper cadre didn't want to look like they'd wasted the church's money, so they classified the hern and Pari as animals and called in help from the Solaris Agency, much in the way as you intervene on other worlds. By then, the war had broken out. Brother Copernicus slumps. His breathing is ragged and irregular. They're abandoning these lovely people to the hern butchers. They're saying these people don't deserve the grace of God because they don't happen to believe in any God at all. You know, it's the Universal Church's first directive to go and find intelligent alien societies and prove they believe in God, and that this will prove his existence to non-believers and skeptics. He buries his face in his hands. So, we find a remotely intelligent society. We come in, we wreck it so that one half of a functioning ecosystem starts to kill off the other, and then we tell everyone that, oh no, it was a mistake. These were never people, and they were never intelligent. You know what that means to me, Envoy Miranda Tonkin. It proves to me that there is no God. If there was, he certainly would have stopped this. His shoulders are shaking. I don't know what to say. I was born nominally religious, but have never cultivated that aspect of my life. I don't know how it feels to have your belief, your sole reason of being, ripped out from under you. But I imagine it feels at least as bad as finding out at 16 that your parents are not your real parents and, moreover, want nothing more to do with you. It feels at least as bad as being sardined onto a long-haul passenger liner to Solaris Station. It feels as bad as knocking on your grandmother's door and having a neighbour inform you that the old lady died 3 months ago. It feels as bad as wandering the docks without money or a place to stay, being hungry, selling yourself in dark nooks of disreputable corridors until some bugger comes along who gives you a disease that lands you in emergency. My eyes mist over. Out of clumsiness or fear that anything I say will be taken wrongly, I enclose him in my arms. His head rests on my ample breasts. He smells of rubber and sweat and the inside of rebreather masks. It's a long time since I've touched anyone, and this shattered, pathetic human fills me with guilt for all those people whose lives I've ruined. Not personally, but there is always a downside to peace contracts the agency negotiates. Always. Land tilled for years that has to be given up. Murders of family members that must go unavenged. Cultural artifacts lost that can never be retrieved. I run my hand over the scratchy stubble of his head. He takes my hand and wipes it over his face, wet with tears. With a shock, I realize his lips are caressing my skin. I twitch, but fall short of pulling away. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "I haven't touched anyone for years." He lets my hand go for me to withdraw it. I let it rest while I deliberate on the wisdom of taking this any further, decide the heck with it, and caress his shaven cheek with my thumb. Neither of us says anything. Neither of us wants to acknowledge that this is happening and where it is going. I'm sick of this job. I'm sick of my broken body. I've searched for years to find someone who wouldn't be revolted at the sight of it. He is lonely, needy, and desperate. Robes allow for easy access. The table makes a convenient seat at the right height. Our joining is quick, sweaty, and completely silent. When it's over, he hangs on to me like I'm a lifebuoy in a turbulent sea. Then he steps away, letting our robes drop back to their rightful places. "The original sin, huh?" he laughs. "Who worries about this while out there people are dying by the millions? I tell you, the original sin was murder, and it was done in the name of God. This is no Eden. There is no God. Please, Miranda, tell Solaris to send an army to control the Hearn and restore balance on the planet before you order us out." Chapter 7. I go back to my room, where it is dark and the air is stale, and my only company is a creaky bed, a tiny desk and a chair. No windows. The door shuts with a thud, enclosing me in my claustrophobic cell. I'm tired, I'm hot, I want to go back to Solaris. Brother Copernicus speaks about evolution. I believe evolution is already here. Third-generation child of space-based humans, I'm no longer fit to live on the surface of a planet. I've come here to observe, not to solve everyone's problems. How could I possibly stop this war without the massive slaughter Brother Copernicus wants me to order, or the massive slaughter that will happen when we withdraw? The Hearn or the Parry? Since when does humanity have the right to determine who will live? Whatever we decide at that Solaris board meeting, we will have blood on our hands. We don't want interference, but we're already in too deep. A light flickers on my PAD that lies face up on the desk. The beam sweep has crawled through our little section of space and delivered its payload. There is a flashing message icon on the screen. I haul the file through the descrambler to read it. The results from my earlier query about the white powder. It's titanium oxide. The same stuff that's used in paints and sun protection. It's intensely white. I knew all of that already. Titanium makes up a surprisingly high proportion of biomass on Bianca, about 98% of it in the form of oxide. It appears to be taking part of the function of carbon as building material, since Bianca is quite low on carbon. I sigh with the irrelevance of it. There is so much more pressing stuff I should have asked. And the next beam sweep, damn, is not due for another 3 days, by which time Armageddon might have broken out, if not outside, within the mission. Chapter 8. I wake up at banging on the door, loud enough to rattle the walls of the room. I open my eyes, and I still can't see a thing. There is an odd rumble on the roof. Who is it? My voice is rough with sleep. I sit up, realizing the rumble on the roof is torrential rain. What is the time? Where is the light switch? I swing my feet over the edge of the bed and reach for the crutches. Can't find them. Stumble for the door. Oh, damn my knee. More banging. Hello, envoy. I open the door. Brother Tycho is in the corridor. It's about Brother Copernicus, he says. My mind flashes with unpleasant scenarios. Brother Tycho's found out what happened in that deserted lab. Worse, he's found out what Brother Copernicus said to me. He's dead. Shot himself in the head. I want to protest. He's okay. I only saw him just before going to bed, but I know it's true. The pieces of the puzzle come together. He was a broken man, allowing himself one long-denied pleasure before taking his own life. After losing his faith, there was nothing left for him. I find the light switch and my crutches, and slip the protective robe over my head. Brother Tycho takes me through the dark corridors to the brothers' sleeping quarters, row upon row of cell-like rooms, possibly even smaller than mine. What is the big deal with the rabbit cages? Apart from extruder materials, there isn't much extra running cost, and with a level of UV, certainly none that can't be generated locally. Give these men a pleasant living environment, and they might actually stay sane. Brother Copernicus lies on the bed on his back, his eyes closed. He looks asleep, except his chest isn't moving. The gun lies nestled between his neck and shoulder, the safety still off. There is little damage from the shot, as I know there wouldn't be with plasma weapons. Just an intense red patch of skin on his left temple. I imagine him lying there, holding the gun to his head and pushing the trigger, his body convulsing as the charge hits. My eyes mist over. Clumsy as I am, I kneel on the side of the bed and take his hand, cold and stiff. The hand that caressed me only a few hours ago. My lips twitch involuntarily. I rummage in my pockets. Amongst keys and data chips, I find a piece of wood I picked up from the Perry camp. Somehow it seems appropriate as farewell token. I place it on his robe, letting my hand linger on his unmoving chest, seeing him surrounded by the small Perry. I don't think he understood them, but he cared. He cared too much. Don't remove it from him, I say to Brother Tycho while I struggle to my feet. At Solaris, we farewell people by placing tokens with the body before incineration. He says nothing as I walk past him into the corridor, desperate not to let him see my face or the tears running down my cheeks. Chapter 9. I'm not a few steps gone when someone yells down the corridor, "Alarm! The Hearn have escaped from the compound!" Someone else shouts, "Everyone, mobilize!" Within seconds, brothers are rushing into the corridor, pulling on robes and strapping on masks. In the throng of bodies, a brother hands me a plasma gun. "Safe to use at night," he says before moving on. It turns out the brothers have another secret weapon, a vehicle, which they say also can only be used at night. I wonder why, but I want to waste no one's time with questions. We pile in. The door hisses shut. The airlock hums open. Red signs flash on the walls. Beware, fire danger. The driver shifts the truck into gear and it jerks forward. Rain pelts down on the cabin, literally as if someone is hosing the windows. I think I understand why guns and the truck are safe to use at night. Nothing burns long in this downpour. One of the brothers is yelling instructions and safety precautions. No one is to take off their gloves and head protection at any time. I know, the rain is so acid it causes blisters. The vehicle jumps over the uneven ground. Wheels churn in slippery mud. I hang on to the handhold, alternately squashed into the side by the weight of bodies on my bench, or holding on so I don't squash the people next to me. First stop, the Herne camp. The door opens, letting in a cloud of humidity. I hang onto my mask, feeling claustrophobic again. A camp guard yells over the pelting rain. "No damage to the perimeter! All asleep!" The door shuts again. Everyone is talking, and with the noise of the engine and the rain, I'm missing half the conversation. But I gather that the Herne who have mounted an attack on the Parry did not come from the detention area. We arrive at the Parry camp. The cabin door opens and everyone is pushing to get out. Onto the muddy ground, where my crutches promptly sink into the soft soil. Someone helps me into the hall of the central building, where we're out of the rain. A small group of Parry waits there, in a pool of light from a neon storm lamp strung onto the lift ropes. I'm wondering where the rest of the Parry are, and why they haven't gathered here to be together and safer in the face of an attack. Maybe the rest of the brothers will bring them here. Brother Tycho is speaking to another missionary. "Who were these Herne? Where did they come from?" The missionary doesn't know. Says he's not familiar enough with the Herne to be able to tell individuals apart. The Parry just stand there, staring. Surely they know these Herne well enough to recognize them. "Anyone here who can speak a few words of their language?" I ask. A brother comes forward. "We can protect you from the Herne," I say, and the brother translates. "You have to help us. I want you to point out the individuals who attacked you so they can be punished. If we can catch these killers, then we can start negotiating peace." "Peace," one of them repeats and drops to the ground, knees in the mud. "Peace," says another, and within a few seconds all the Parry are on their knees, murmuring "peace," until the sound mingles with the teeming rain. I feel like tearing my hair out. At least Brother Copernicus could make some sort of sense out of them. "You want peace? Then tell me who came here. Where did they come from?" They stop their murmuring, eyeing me from under deep frowns. Angry, although I don't know why. Someone is shouting elsewhere in the camp. A flash, a zap of fire. We peer into the rain. To my horror, it falls less heavily than before. Dark shapes run through the camp, too tall to be Parry. All around me, brothers unlock their weapons with definitive clicks. "Any news from the others?" I ask a brother who's wearing a headset. Whatever answer he would have given drowns in shouts from the Parry camp. The brother runs, pulling his crossbow from over his shoulder. A few steps into the rain, he stops and takes aim, shoots, runs forward, shoots again. Too late. The Herne swarm all over the gathering house where the Parry are still sitting on their knees. I scream, "Get up! Fight!" I find a bundle of sticks and toss them into the group, but the Parry just sit there, passive, still murmuring, "Peace." Brothers discharge guns at random, but the Herne take no notice. They take hits, but walk on, oblivious to their wounds. Their comrades are killed, but they don't seem to care. I'm holding the gun in outstretched arms, but I know I won't use it. The shot might hit a Parry or a brother. The Herne pick up the Parry as if they're dolls, slicing open their bellies with long nails. They scoop out handfuls of blood and drink it. The black fluid runs down their faces, necks, and pale-skinned bellies. In the carnage, I spot a hern wearing a white armband. The murdering bastard! In my rage, I don't think, but struggle forward, pointing the gun at the creature. "Stop it, now!" I scream. The hern does, turns her head. Her eyes meet mine. As a black mixture of blood and entrails oozes from her fingers, I recognize her face. No, she hasn't killed the Parry girl I gave that armband. She is the Parry girl I gave the armband. I lower the gun, trembling. She wipes blood on her thighs and takes a few steps towards me. The dark patches on her skin have grown and have turned green. She reaches out and touches my robe with a blood-stained hand. I need all my willpower not to discharge the gun. "Money!" She takes my hand and places it on her belly. I slide my fingers up and down the blood-covered skin. It feels tight, even through my gloves, like her entire belly cavity is taken up by a huge football, a white membranous sac brimming with eggs. This is absurd. The hern think I'm pregnant rather than obese. And I realize the Parry and hern are not separate species, but stages in the life cycle of one species. That's why there are no young, why the Parry don't seem to reproduce. They are immature. That's why the hern don't eat regular food. Their bodies only need to feed the eggs. Of course they're angry with us for disrupting the process, and trying to stop it is utterly futile. "Stop shooting!" I shout at the brother nearest to me, but his eyes are glazed over. I push him hard, causing him to fall. The gun slips from his hands. I step on it before he can pick it up. "Stop shooting! There is no point!" He sits there, panting. The next moment he's on his feet again and he takes off into the darkness. The hern girl that used to be Parry is dragging bodies into a pile, many of them bloodied and mangled beyond recognition. She's alternately cramming grisly entrails into her mouth or clutching her belly, gagging and coughing. "Are you okay?" I ask, foolishly. She looks up, frothy vomit dribbling down her chin, seems surprised I'm still here, and motions with her hand over the top of the trees, where the sky has turned light blue. It's almost daytime. It has stopped raining, and humidity is dropping. Another hern throws a burning log into the pile of bodies. Fire spreads like an ink stain. Fire. My mind rings with warnings. Warnings in the cabin of the craft that brought me here. Warnings plastered on every wall in every corridor of the mission building. In case of fire, make your way to the bunker immediately. Do not try to save others. Do not try to retrieve material goods. Do not fire weapons. Do not hesitate. I run. I didn't think I could, but I do. Past the half-built houses, past the fields, my crutches sinking deep into the mud. I see no Parry, only hern. Some are still gorging themselves. Others are running around with burning torches. Others still look like zombies, clutching bellies that are visibly swollen, their eyes wide and faces gaunt, with what I presume is pain. "Thank the Lord, envoy, there you are!" A single brother waits at the entrance of the camp. "Quick! Let's get out of here!" He grabs my arm and drags me onto the white field with its oozing thick mud. I gasp. "The truck! Can't use it! Would blow up! In the daytime! Run! As fast as you can!" I push down my crutches, haul myself forward, again and again. I think both my knees and hips will need surgery after this, but I run, for Brother Copernicus. Behind us, the burning camp lights up the morning sky. The heat radiates through the back of my robe. At the mission's entrance, the alarms are ringing. The air whooshes past with a rush of oxygen making its way to the fire. 50% oxygen in the air. It's like a bomb. White flames leap from the camp to the trees, higher than I've ever seen. There is an explosion, a flash. The sound follows a second later. I'm thinking how there is no way the hern can escape the inferno to birth their young safely. Flames billow out from the forest, spreading over the canopy, engulfing it. "In the bunkers, now!" Brother Tycho shouts over the roar. In the throng of bodies, I'm unsure who helps me. Even inside the building, the air shimmers with that sort of tension that makes me sure it's about to explode. A brother stands at the entrance to the bunker, making sure everybody has their rebreather masks and supply packs. Because when the fire has passed, there will likely be nothing left of the building. Down the stairs, 1, 2, 3 stories, into claustrophobic darkness, we all huddle on the floor while explosions shake the ground. I don't know how long I sit there, concentrating on my breathing in that dark and cramped space that smells of sweaty bodies even through the mask. It's pitch dark, and I count the time by how often I have to crawl over legs to visit the toilet. The hole in the ground is designed only for men, and after 3 days, or what I think has been 3 days, I can smell it through the mask. Eventually someone decides the fire is over and climbs up the stairs to open the airlock. I'm busy thumbing messages on my PAD for the next beam sweep, which is due very soon. I'm not going to wait until I've surveyed the disaster outside. With that chemical cocktail, there is not going to be anything left for us to survive. We'll need to be lifted off this hellhole soon. When I finally climb outside the bunker, it turns out I'm even more right than I thought. Not only has the building burned to cinders, there is nothing left of the forest. The ground is covered in white ash as far as I can see. There is no sign of the Parry or the hern, or indeed of any life. It's raining. A brother is walking around with an air quality meter. He turns around and laughs, takes off his mask. Everyone yells at him, but he just laughs. "It's safe," he shouts, and balls his fists at the sky. "The air is safe." The ash in the older burnt tracks is no longer white, but grey with soot. I kick the muddy clods, angry with the waste of life. I was sure the hern were about to go through a mass birthing event. Now, thanks to us, they're all dead. My boot dislodges a rock. Underneath, I can see green. With difficulty, I sink to my knees and push the ash away with my gloves. I find a seedling. Another piece of the puzzle falls into place. The ash, and specifically the titanium oxide, protects the soil from the excessive UV radiation. That is necessary because the soil is mostly inorganic. With a high oxygen atmosphere, fallen leaves take next to no time to decay, so there is no leaf litter to shelter seeds. The hern create paths where the catastrophic fires that are inevitable won't reach. Fire breaks, as it were. Corridors where regeneration will be a few months ahead of everywhere else, so that when the fires come, their progeny will have food. But there is no progeny. The entire planet is dead. Chapter 10. The rescue team takes time to turn up. In the days before they come, we witness a transformation of the tract of formerly ash-covered land next to the ruins of the mission. On the first day, whole slabs of ground lift up with the force of growing seedlings. We camp in tents, and we've had to put our masks back on. The air is heavy with cyanide, which I've come to associate with growing plants on this planet. Soon, plants jostle each other for sunlight, spreading out their little canopies further and further. If we could see the planet from space now, it would look like a negative image of what I saw on arrival. a white planet intersected with bands of green. On the second day, I notice movement in the greenery. There are already some butterfly-like creatures out, fluttering in the shimmering air. On the third day, the smaller plants burst into flower. I suspect they will set seed and will not grow again until the next fire. On the fourth day, I am busy recording the astonishing growth when my scanner picks up a weak signal. The beam sweep isn't due for another 2 days, and the signal isn't strong enough anyway. It repeats a single ID tag, a 12-digit code. That's like a travel tag. My heart thudding, I dig in the layer of ash and mud and locate my armband, no longer white, but half melted and grey. I'm standing on the remains of the Herne girl. Again I dig in the cover of ash. I smear it all over my sleeves, but I don't mind. With all the bending and kneeling, some of my muscle strength has returned, and in the past few days I've felt better than I have for years. My gloves strike something soft. Carefully I scrape ash away from a white mushroomy thing, egg-shaped and longer than my forearm. Its soft leathery skin quivers when I touch it. The surface is warm. I dig it free from the soil and have just lifted it onto my lap when the skin ruptures, peeling back as if it's been shot from the inside. Slime oozes onto my robes. Something moves inside the leathery sack. I push the membranous flaps aside and out crawls a humanoid creature, unfolding long legs and stretching out of its confines. It rolls off my robe and crawls to its feet. It only reaches to my knee and is skinny and covered in slime, but I recognize the brown skin and lithe form of the Parry. All around me similar mushrooms are popping. The life cycle is complete. The recently burned soil is barren still, but I have no doubt that, given a few months of regeneration, it will burst with life. Then the trees will grow and the Parry will get bigger. They will start building, accumulating fuel for the fires. And then, after years of growth, when the forest is mature, the Parry will start to change, entering their last phases of metamorphosis, losing the ability to communicate and focusing only on the instinct to cannibalize for the need to reproduce. How long this will take is anybody's guess. We might hang around to study the process. Yes, I think I might recommend that to the board. I might even do a stint myself, but no more missionaries, only observers. Bianca doesn't need us and has never done so. Thank you for listening to This Peaceful State of War. For my other books, please visit my website, pattyjansen.com.